Okay, guys, here we are again. We're getting toward the end of the semester, and I realized we still haven't talked about typography. We've talked about some of the things that you do, but we haven't really talked about typography proper. So, this week I want you to go back to the Photoshop CC Visual Quick Start Guide and skip to the end to chapter 19. It's a chapter all about type. Even in that Photoshop book, it's kind of an afterthought. It's at the back of the book, and it doesn't really give a lot of basics on typography, but it shows you how to use it in Photoshop. So before you do that, you might want to watch this video. Also, I know a little bit about typography. I designed my own font many years ago in Macromedia Fontographer, which sadly no longer exists as far as I know. And But I am by no means a type expert. So I'm going to include some links to some YouTube videos by graphic designers who can explain typography a lot better than I can. However, let's take a look at some very basics about typography. So first I'll open up Microsoft Word, and I just typed some stuff in Microsoft Word. Most of you should be familiar with Microsoft Word and a little bit about typography. You know that this is where you choose your font, and this is your font size. Font size is measured in points, and the standard size is 12 points usually. So I typed stuff out using the default margins here, and as you can see, that's 1 inches on each side. Now, when you are typing stuff, for your web page or whatever, you want to avoid what I just did here, which is I wrote a few sentences and it ends with one word on a line. That's what's known as a widow, and it is called that because it's no longer married to the type next to it. So generally, you want to avoid that, and one of the basic ways of doing that is to go in and change your margins. And so, if this was some copy that I really cared about, I might try a narrower margin or something so that I got everything on the same line, or moderate margins, something like that. I don't care that much. I just typed this up in here so that I could copy and paste it into Photoshop, where we're really gonna be working. So select it, copy. But just to show you something else while we're here, you can also put stuff in more than one column in Microsoft Word, and you know, adjust your size, orientation, and you can do a lot with your design using themes and stuff like that. So Microsoft Word has a lot of tools that allow you to mess with the typography, but we are more concerned with other forms of media than print. So let's take a look at Photoshop. I'm opening up Adobe Photoshop, and we're going to use the basic default colors here. We want a new file. I'm just going to choose the standard default Photoshop. Oops, I don't know why it did that. default Photoshop. And then when you're in Photoshop to do type, you want to choose the type tool, which is this letter here with T for type. And then as soon as you click on your document here, it creates a different layer just for the type. So whenever you type something in, it's on its own layer in Photoshop. I'm going to use the Command V to paste stuff in there. Now, what you don't see here is any type because it's in white, because that's our default color, and white on white. So I want to just select all of that and flip it to black. Oops. We're going to have to use our color picker to pick black. All right. Now also, it's all defaults to one line here, and that's not what we want. So we want to break this up. So I got to go back in here with the type tool and hit return. That puts it onto 2 lines. Drag that back to the middle. Hit return. Put it on 3 lines. Still longer than I want it to be. So I go back to my type tool. Put it on 4 lines. Now it's getting a little more manageable. And there's one more sentence here, so let's break it into 5 lines. All right, so what we have is 5 lines of text. Now, the main thing to remember when you're creating your website, your web page, anything like that, is that you want your type to stand out from the background. So basically, if you remember our color picker over here, you want a high contrast between your foreground and your background. The main way to do that is to have, if you remember our hue, saturation, and brightness, you want to have your brightness each of these values to be as contrasting with the value of the other part. So if your background is white, you want to get as far away from white as possible, which is black, to make it stand out as much as possible. If, say, your background is red, again, black works good. The other thing you can do is you can choose something on the opposite side of the color wheel. If you're using a red, something on the opposite side of the color wheel from that, basically each one of those, hue, saturation, and lightness, you want to be as opposite. Any of those, the more the opposite they are from each other, the more it will stand out. So for the purposes of this, we're just going to use black and white, which is about as opposite as you can get. Okay, now you can see the type here that it defaulted to was whatever I had it left to. I just clicked there, and so suddenly it opened and it started another layer. I'm going to undo that. It's not going to let me undo that. So I could delete that layer. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to click on the layer that I want, which is this one. And then if I click anywhere in there, you'll see that this is Myriad Pro. So up here, we can control the basics of our font. So if I select it all, and I can change it to whatever I want. So I can choose, say, Helvetica or Helvetica New. Everybody likes Helvetica New. This is the Apple font. So basically, you can kind of see what the font looks like here next to it. There are basically two types of fonts that you don't really need to know too much about this, but the two types of fonts that are most common you see in here are Truetype fonts and Postscript fonts. Truetype fonts were created by Apple and are sort of the default you get with Apple, and they were licensed by Microsoft. So Apple and Microsoft products like Windows use Truetype fonts, and Adobe had its own has its own type of fonts, which are Postscript fonts. So if you ever see references to those, you'll know what it is. It's becoming less and less of a the distinction is becoming less important. But you get a basic bunch of fonts, usually correspond with whatever you have in your operating system. Some people who get really seriously into design buy fonts, and spend hundreds of dollars on fonts. Adobe has used to have a lot of fonts in their products, and when they went to Creative Cloud, or shortly before that, they split off into a separate program. I know, like Adobe doesn't have enough programs, but it's a program called I think it's Font Toolkit, and its product gives you access to the complete range of Adobe fonts. So anyway, Helvetica New, and then here, this next box here, we can choose whether we want it in bold or italic or anything like that. A lot of graphic designers eschew the use of bold or italics, but I think it can look nice. The main thing is you want to consider what you're designing for. Remember, we've learned a couple of HTML tags to affect things. General type we know is in a P, enclosed in angle brackets for paragraph. And to do italics, remember it's EM for emphasis in angle brackets, of course. Your headers, H1 enclosed in angle brackets. There's a header 2 and a header 3 and a header 4. Generally, most people say to keep it to just a header and a body, or body text, or at the most have header 2, a subheader. And it's important to try to choose two fonts that are contrasting between your header and your body. So let's talk a little bit about that. Most fonts can be divided into one of two types. You got your fonts like Times New Roman or Courier. Let me see if I can find. You can also type right in here, like say I want Times New Roman. I can type it in here, then select it, and there it is. This is what's known as a serif font. Serif fonts have these little end pieces here. See that going down and on the sides of the T and the H. This is because when these Roman letter forms were created, notice it's called Times New Roman. Originally, the Romans chiseled this stuff into marble, and to prevent the marble from cracking all the way down, they would create these serifs, and chisel in like these lines so that when they chiseled the part in between, it would stop right at the line instead of having the crack keep going. Anyway, you don't really need to know that. It's just that that's why we have serifs, or type that has serifs. The other type of type, which we just had up here, Helvetica New, this is sans serif. There are no serifs on it, and sans serif just means without serifs. So that's a sans serif font, Helvetica New. All right. Then going back to our type tool, and we can look at some other things here. This is how you change the points. Points is basically your font size. 72 points is 1 inch. That is the standard, industry standard for 1 inch. So basically 1 inch is pretty big type. If you printed it out, it would be 1 inch. So yeah, we're not going to increase it any here. You can also choose to sharpen, smoothen, things like that. Your type, that's here. Sharp, crisp, strong, smooth. These are just ways that the font can be displayed. Left justify, that makes all of your text aligned to the left. And then, of course, there's a right justify, which aligns everything to the right side. Generally, we don't do that, but you may have an artistic or a web page that requires it for some reason. And then there's, of course, center justified. Oops, it just did it for one line because I didn't have everything selected. Center justified, of course, is what we had it in before, where the lines are based around a center point and they're ragged. These are called ragged edges. They're ragged on both sides. Okay. Now, there is a entire text tool palette over here. There should be anyway. I don't know. I lost it. There it is. So basically, you can change the way your fonts are displayed and stuff like that. I click advanced here, and I'm going to drag that out. So, we are not in Helvetica New. We're back to Myriad Pro. So let's change this to Helvetica. Let's just do standard Helvetica. So these are all the Helvetica family here. Helvetica New, Helvetica Bold, and you have a little idea of what it is. These all say TT next to them. That means they're Truetype fonts. Helvetica New Bold. Okay, that's good enough for what I need to display. So bold, of course, you have different types of bold. 12 points. This is another place where you can control your size. And I'm going to make it big because we got to talk about some of this stuff. That's too big. Let's try the 16 fit. 16 is a little too big. Maybe we're going to be stuck with 14. Okay. So now let's look at some of these other things here. So I'm going to concentrate on because. This right here. Let's put it on its own line so you can see it better. And I'm going to put it in the middle. All right, so let's make this really big. All right, and let's get it further away from its other the other words here. All right. So now when we have over here, this is basically your font size. We've got it at 36. This right here is your leading, what's known as your leading. This is the distance between lines. So if I select these two lines and I increase the leading to 16, you notice the lines got further apart from each other. If I reduce that to 12, they get closer together. Move it back to 14. All right. This is what's known as your kerning. Kerning is the distance between two letters. So say I want B and cause to be a little bit further apart. Maybe I'm saying the word because, but I also want it, maybe the name of the organization is because. I don't know, the client. I just made that up. But basically, you can change the kerning here. Sometimes you can. Some fonts it'll let you, some fonts it will not let you. Obviously, this one's not letting us right now. If I put it in between, I can increase the distance in between these. So it's at 0 now. Let's put it at, say, 5. Notice those two, the E and the C, have separated some. Let's make it even more dramatic. I'll take it up to 25. All right. 75. 200. And you can keep going. This also acts as a slider, so I can, I can hand type in here what I want, or when it's got the double arrow, I can like slide it up and down. We'll leave it at 200. This is tracking. The next one over. Now, tracking is all the letters in a word. So if I select it all and I click on tracking and slide that up, I'm moving all the letters in the word further or closer together. Now remember, the B, the E, and the C are going to be slightly separated from each other because I've messed with I changed their kerning. But even with the kerning changed, I can slide up and down the tracking and add more space between the other letters as well. So kerning is between two letters and tracking is between all the letters of a word. Kind of frowned upon, but you can change the height of your font here and the width of your font here. The reason it's frowned upon is because a lot of time and development has gone into the spacing between these letter forms. And you're basically throwing that all away if you override it by choosing to change it. But if you're designing a poster or something, you might want to do that. This here is for superscripting stuff. If you have like something to the power, say, you can change the color here. Basically brings up the good old color picker. There's a fast way to change things like, to turn it into italics or to underline it or something like that. You can also change your language, and again, you got the sharp, smooth, strong, crisp choices here. That's basically it. I think I've talked enough. More about the baselines and ascenders and things like that, I'm going to have to find some YouTube videos online to explain all that to you. But there you have it. That's my really quick intro to typography. I hope you liked it, and I will next week we'll probably be talking about more about web design.